Hello world, and welcome back to, or welcome to, the Pop Culture Patter podcast. As always, I'm your host, Callum Brown, and today's guest is a good friend of mine, and one I'm grateful to call friend. His name is Gordon Dixon, and Gordon is one of the most interesting humans that I know. I could literally talk to him all day, and an hour certainly didn't feel like enough time. Like many friendships at this stage in life gets in the way, and you don't see your friends as often as you should. One thing about this podcast is that I'm using it as an excuse to see my friends more often and stay in touch. Gordon and I catch up, talk about the Britpop era of music in the early 90s, his travels in 2007, and he even shares a new band for us all to check out. This session was recorded with our friends at the Podcast Studio Glasgow, located in the east end of this beautiful city. For more information or to book a session, please visit www.podcaststudioglasgow.com. And before we get into this episode, here's a little word from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Brown & Co Properties, an award-winning family-run estate agency based in Whitburn, West Lothian. With a property mark protected service for a fixed fee, we are your go-to agent for expert property sales advice in the area. Get on the go with Brown & Co.
Gordon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me along.
It's been a minute. How the hell are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for asking. Glad to see the back of lockdown.
Yes.
It felt long while it was happening, but now, like a holiday, it feels like it was a really short experience, and despite the fact that it went on far too long. So yes.
Yeah, and what was your experience during lockdown? How was it for you?
I changed jobs right near the beginning,
Right.
And was working from home. And so one laptop went in the post and another one arrived.
Right.
And apart from that, I stared out the window a lot.
Oh.
So it felt, there's that saying month of Sundays.
Yeah.
Where it felt like a year of Sundays. It was like I was just on pause.
Yeah.
And just sat there quietly in the dark until it started again.
Yeah.
And I was expecting it to be a short pause, and it wasn't. It was like it just kept going and going and going.
Yeah.
But I made the conscious effort to kind of, isolate myself from
Right.
people. So I didn't go down south to see my parents.
Yep.
So they're getting old a bit, because obviously there's the travelling down to them and back. Like
Yeah.
you might be testing okay and then get on a train and then catch all sorts, and so we just kind of decided to kind of keep apart. So what it did do is it got us speaking every day rather than every few days. So actually in some ways we're closer now, far apart.
Yeah.
Because of it, because we were having to speak every day,
Yeah.
checking in on things and helping out with stuff and getting things delivered to them because they weren't going out. So, in some ways it was some good came out of it.
Yeah, I know. And for me, working in lockdown from home was a bit of a challenge. I don't know what it was about it. It just wasn't natural. You're waking up, you would normally go for a shower, get your breakfast, jump on the train. But you were getting up and you were like, I can get showered whenever I want now, kick about in my shorts. And luckily I stayed away from a lot of the phone calls in terms of the Zoom, which was good because I would have been shirtless and, I would have had to put clothes on.
Yes.
But working from home for you, did that suit you?
It did a little bit. Certainly the shock of getting up, getting ready and coming on the train to come here, even though it's only like 10 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm glad I don't commute anymore. But yeah, I'm lucky I've got a spare room in my flat. So it does feel like when that door closes at the end of the day and I walk out, then work is done.
Yeah.
It's not lingering in the evening.
Yeah.
And like at Christmas, kind of shut the door. And actually, when I went back in January, I forgot my password. So my first task, the 2nd of January, was to get in touch with IT and say, how do I unlock my computer?
Yeah.
Because I'd forgotten, because I hadn't opened it for 2 weeks. So that was good. So I think I've got that balance right. But I know for some, it's a real challenge. They don't have that private space to be able to kind of focus and concentrate. So I think a lot of people have looked forward to having somewhere to go again, whereas
I know. I changed jobs in the pandemic. The company that I was working for, the headphone company, they kind of vanished in thin air due to struggles with the COVID pandemic, and I then got laid off. So luckily I'd been there for like 7.5 years, so I got 7 weeks notice. So I had 7 weeks to find another job, and I found one within a couple of weeks, which was good. So got a little bit of downtime before starting that job, and then went in, and it was a work on site job, which was good because you got back to seeing people, and you weren't like managing a team from home is so difficult without the phone calls and stuff, because my team didn't really want to do the whole Zoom thing, so we were just communicating through Teams by message, and it was kind of hard. We're finishing, the workload was getting shorter and shorter, and we were like, it's 11 o'clock and we've got no work to do. So we ended up getting a lot of downtime, which was great. What are you currently doing now for work?
So I program manage the development of training for a software company. So I had a training background. That's how you and I know each other.
Yep.
And but I oversee the development of the training. So I'm not responsible for creating the training directly or delivering it.
Right.
It's overseeing, project managing the kind of sort of the course of that. And they're normally spaced out during the course of the year, but inevitably they're all happening right now. So there's a lot going on. So I'm hoping my phone doesn't buzz too often during this conversation. But it's really interesting, really good, and I get to work with a really amazing range of people across the world. So that's really good.
And I'm just going to put a timer on this. Sorry.
That's okay.
And it was a friend, George, that you worked with the same company at the time. Was that right? Is he no longer with that company?
Yeah. So he was there, and then opening came up in his team, and he got in touch with me, and I kind of joined, and then sort of what felt like 2 minutes later, he was like, "I'm off." I was like, "Cheers, mate. Thanks a lot. Just leave me here." So, but no, it's really good, and it's a great place to work. And what was really nice talking about that distance was that when I finally got to meet colleagues, they were just the same in person as you'd grown to, get to know them in between conversations or at the ends of meetings, or, having that chance to have a slightly longer conversation. So in my head, we all work in this kind of virtual office, and all the people in my team, we all sit at one desk, and then there's another team that we work closely with, they sit over there, and things like that. So that's how I kind of keep it human, and it's not little faces on a little screen. But there are some people that left the business before I got a chance to meet them, even though I spoke to them every day. It's really odd.
And has there been any virtual nights out? You've had any Zoom? I
think that got tried, and I think it was always really tricky because the night out time for like colleagues in America was like the middle of their morning. So you can't really do a cocktail hour. So I think that was harder. So the easiest thing is just actually get everyone together and do it that way. So when we do meet, there's a lot of work during the day, but you've got to be ready for a lot of fun in the evening as well.
And are they based in the States then?
They're based globally, but
globally.
There is kind of a large hub in the US, but there's lots in Europe as well. So there's over 5,000 people worldwide, and there's a good couple of thousand in Europe and a couple of thousand in the States.
Wow! So did you get to go and visit some of these sites, or?
Yes, yeah. So that's starting to pick up now as well. But I'm sure, like a lot of businesses, you find out how much you were able to do without that.
Yeah.
So there's the reason to be together has to be something more than just having a meeting, which is how I think a lot of people operated in the past. So previous versions of my role would have been literally, you have to talk to these people, we'll go to X, Y, and Z to have a meeting with them. Whereas now we find ways to do that online, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah.
Even if you can get a lot done.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the last time we actually saw each other. I believe it might have been George Campbell's 40th.
Something like that, yeah, probably.
Yeah, which was probably about 5 years ago.
Oh, he's much older than that, I'm
Is
sure.
he?
So I'm sure it's even longer. That's just in case
Sorry,
he's
George.
listening. Yeah.
If you're listening.
We'll make him listen. We'll tell him.
Yeah, we'd love to get you on as well. And I think it would be great if we all sat down. It'd be quite cool to reminisce over some old times, because, we had that, we met because you were a trainer and I was a student, and, George and Jamie and Ewan were putting on a band, and they didn't have a singer, and came to me, and then that made me a part of the group, and you guys all kind of took me under your wings, which was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I was really disappointed that you guys didn't become hugely successful because I'm not a musician. So I was angling for that kind of sort of manager role, the kind of Anthony Wilson, Malcolm McLaren, kind of sort of Alan McGee. I was definitely looking for that. So you let me down.
I know. It didn't work out. And I can remember playing Ibrox Stadium. You know, I can say that I played a stadium gig when in actual fact it was just one of the suites.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it's Ibrox. And there was like a round 1 and a round 2, and I think round 1 was just to filter out all the kind of rubbish acts.
Yeah.
Because it was a company thing.
Yeah, it was like a talent show thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think we rehearsed once or twice, and we played Sex on Fire by the Kings of Leon, and we played probably the slowest version of that song, and it sounded absolutely terrible. I can remember performing it and just like within myself just cringing at how bad it was. And I don't know how, but we got through at the final. And then we became second to George being first. So George was in the band, got us all together, and then he took to the stage earlier that night in a leotard and played piano, and everybody loved it. And he won. So he won first and second prize, which was a good night for him, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, never made it in the end.
There's that parallel universe where we're all off on jets around the world playing Wembley and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So well done to those guys over there.
Yeah. In the multiverse, yes. I've got a heroin addiction, battling that, and you know, I'm on my fourth breakup or whatever.
Right. So you think it would have been more like Spinal Tap than something amazing like the Beatles? Okay.
Yeah. No, I think writing music never came to me when I was in a band.
Yeah.
It was the most difficult thing I could ever do. It just got to the point where everybody else kind of knew what they were doing, and they were riffing off each other, and then they would look to me for the lyrics, and I just was like, I don't know. I have loads to probably write about, but it just didn't come to me naturally. So that's how I gravitated away from music, and I've now got into podcasting.
Right.
And speaking of podcasts, do you listen to any podcasts, or have you got like a favourite show that you tune into all the time?
I go through phases of different ones. So I like listening to history podcasts. There's one on the BBC, In Our Time, which is really good. It looks at history and philosophy and science. Yep. So that one's really good. It feels like, excuse me, the kind of 50s grammar school education that I would have had if I was born in a different decade. So that's quite fun. And to tease you a little bit, because you're a United fan, I also listen to Handbrake Off, the Arsenal podcast on The Athletic, who Arsenal, you know, the team that are top of the league at the moment. That one. Yeah. So I'm really enjoying that one. When we lose, like we did last week against Everton, then I don't listen to that episode, but I'm listening to more than not at the moment because we're winning all the time. Yeah,
and to be honest, I wasn't going to speak about football, but we kind of can't not talk about Arsenal because. You know, they're going through that patch right now that they're just it reminds me of Leicester when Leicester won the league. I don't know if it's because everybody else has just gotten much worse and fallen off. You know, Chelsea have spent billions and changed managers. Liverpool clearly not at the races. City, all this stuff going on at the moment seems to be throwing them off. United quietly getting in there, but not good enough to be challenging for the title. But we're certainly up there. And Arsenal just kind of flying, getting by. It does remind me of that season that Leicester won the title.
But everyone kept on saying they're going to fall away at some point, and then they never did.
Yeah,
it is interesting. But what I would say, to be nice after teasing you a little bit, is that I see what Ten Hag's doing at United is what Arteta was doing last year and the year before at Arsenal. So getting rid of the kind of star player that wasn't on board with what was happening. You know, that was Aubameyang with Arteta. That was Ronaldo with Ten Hag. What I would say is, you know, Arteta nearly went at the end of last season because of the disappointment of not reaching the Champions League places. But they stuck with him, and look what happened. So I suppose that's my advice to you as a kind of dirty Man United fan is stick with him, because you never know. Because, you know, that's seems less and less. I was listening to a podcast and they're talking about managers. Was it Southampton? Jones. He was like, he came in before the World Cup and they're already talking about maybe getting sacked now and getting that third manager in one season, which is just crazy. When you think about like our two teams, you know, Wenger and Ferguson, these people were around for decades. Didn't win every single year, maybe facing a little bit more often.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was down points and up points, and they could have. You don't see that happening now.
Yeah.
Things are so immediate. Like,
Yeah.
go 3 games without losing, and you know, Klopp could lose his job.
I think Klopp's one of those only managers that's protected. I feel that Liverpool just won't sack him, no matter how bad he's doing. I just get the feeling like he's got a job for life there if he wants it.
Which is unusual, because we've just described a world of football where that's not the case. You know, like some teams like PSG and Madrid, it's like the job of the manager is an annual contract. It's a 1-year contract, and that's it. And that's almost the reality now for a lot of teams.
I don't agree with that. I feel with managers, they're sacked far too quickly now. As you said, speaking about the boy, is it Nathan Jones from Southampton? I think they were talking about Graham Potter, who's just got brought in at Chelsea, and all this money being spent, and they're already talking about sacking him. They're just not giving anybody time. It's just something has to change in football, I think, and it shows you that if you give a manager time, back them, like Arteta. You know, I don't think Arteta threw about a lot of money for the first couple of years. He wasn't given a huge amount of budget. He's now, while they're top of the league, you're getting Trossard from Brighton, good player. You're getting who was the other boy they signed? Oh God, who was it? Arsenal. Who did they sign?
So it was, there's the Polish player, and Trossard.
Trossard. They signed somebody else. Jorginho.
Yes,
from Chelsea. That was it. They're giving him that backing. They realised that they maybe picked up a couple of injuries in midfield, and they thought, right, we're going to need to keep this momentum. I don't think they've done that, and I think Wenger must be spitting.
Well, he was back, and that's that. There's a real transformation. I haven't been this season. I went a couple of games last year, and there is a difference. It feels like, you know, it's more than just one person. There's a whole range of things that are coming together. But it's a results business, so everyone's feeling good because they're winning. You know, and all these same things would have been in place, but you know, the game against United could have been the other way around. Whereas, you know, we won. But
fine margin. We were one of the few teams to beat you this year. So.
Exactly. But you know, so it could have been the other way. So everything would have been the same, except, you know, a corner getting cleared or a penalty being missed or something like that. And suddenly the exact same situation would have been seen as very, very different. And I think, you know, as you say, I think that's maybe gone a little too far. But that's an intensity, I think, that is across culture. I don't think it's just football's an extreme version of it because of the nature of the sport. But I think, you know, social media, you know, society, you know, the news, we see that, you know, the kind of sort of opinion cycle is so fast. Like, people can like rise and fall in the course of, you know, a few hours. Like, we've just had a UK Prime Minister that was around for 5 minutes and gone again. And like, you look back and normally they're around for years and years. You know, it's, you know, everything's speeding up in that sense.
It does feel a little bit like football when it comes to politics, doesn't it? You know, the amount of damage that one person did bring in that short time, but
and also the financial corruption looks to be about the same as well.
It's one of those things that I think we need a bit of concrete right now. I think we need somebody to come in and just be like, right, for the next however so years, I'm here, I'm making the decisions, and I'm going to steer us in the right direction, because we're needing something like that at the moment, I feel. But this isn't a politics podcast, so we're not going to get into that.
Okay. That's for another time.
Now, I did have a little segment planned for us, and I forgot to do it. So apologies. I was going to put to test a theory of one of our friends, Jamie Gibson, said to me one time about you. He said, if I was to pluck a random subject out of the air, you'd be able to tell me an interesting fact about it. And I was going to put my pop culture interests in a bowl.
Okay.
So I'm just going to tell you what my pop culture interests are.
Well, just pick one.
Yeah.
You pick it. So instead of me picking the thing out of the... Although it's a podcast, so we could have got away with it.
We could have pretended, I was planning to roll up bits of paper and have you... But I've absolutely shat the bed today, so I'm sorry. So...
That's not the... you know when we talk about that? So say that my favourite scenes is about that. So it's Spud in Trainspotting, you know, and it's like the idea that you know, there was that scene, because I think it's in the book, but also my brain immediately goes to the person on set
Yeah.
having to do that, and the meeting where they decided how they were going to make the sheet, what they were going to put on it. Like,
Yeah.
was it going to be Nutella? Was
Yeah.
it going to be like coffee granules? What it was, they were going to have to make it and then test it out. So you can imagine some poor person
Yeah.
at home or, you know, in a workshop somewhere throwing cloth and seeing if the consistency was right and it was
Yeah.
spraying in the right way.
I was just about to say that the
there's-
consistency was key, wasn't it? It
Yeah.
had to look like it was shit flowing over the.
Yes.
Um,
But also for it to work on camera and not look like it would have done if it had really been,
Yeah.
you know, excrement. So yeah, so there we are. So without picking a bit out of the paper, but you
yeah.
wanna,
So that was that was one. I'll rhyme off a couple of my pop culture interests so that you can maybe pick one.
Okay.
We'll stay away from football because we've talked about football.
Yeah.
So I've got wrestling, I've got gaming, I've got music, mental health, fitness, movies is one of my favourite. So yeah, food as well.
Food, okay.
So
yeah.
uh,
Music, I say,
okay.
you know, I think we were talking about nearly being in a band. So I did realise that I had no ability when it comes to making music. So my interest has always been listening, watching, because you know, musicians need people in the room to perform too. So I feel like I'm very much part of it.
yeah,
Because if there wasn't anyone there screaming and shouting and clapping and buying the records, then you would be just in a room on your own singing.
Yeah.
You'd be like just being back at home in the bath. So yeah. So I suppose so it's music, I suppose, is one of the things I'm most interested in.
Okay, so an interesting fact that most people won't know. You can it can either be either a memory or an interesting fact.
Well, I went to uni in London
Mhm.
in the early 90s, and I was lucky enough to go to the Polytechnic of North London and in Kentish Town in Camden. So we used to go and hang out in the bars that the kind of sort of early, what became Britpop, but was then like kind of indie bands. So
Yep.
Blur and Pulp and Elastica and Sleeper and
Yeah.
all those kind of things. And so there was one night we were in the Good Mixer, which was like kind of sort of indie sort of ground zero in
Yeah.
Camden, and Graham Coxon was
Oh.
there, and we got like chatting to him because
Right.
there was him and us in the bar, and that was pretty much it. And it was really cool. It did feel like you were kind of sitting at the feet of a kind of guru.
Yeah.
And then, but from the outside, probably what it looked like was there was a bunch of kind of spotty student 20-year-olds
Yeah.
with like sort of secondhand sort of jackets on and t-shirts and national health glasses and jeans, sitting in front of a guitarist from a pop band with national health glasses on and a secondhand kind of jacket.
Yeah.
But it was just before Boys and Girls.
Right. Okay.
Had just been released, and so they played The Word on the Friday, and this was this is probably like something like the Sunday or the Monday,
Right.
and they were off to record and perform it on Top of the Pops.
Okay.
So we were chatting away, and mate Andy used to be in a kind of sort of band kind of before he went to uni. And they were chatting away, him and Graham Coxon, and they're like, I really like your jacket. And like to me, they looked exactly the same jacket. It was like both bought from Camden Market. And he says, your jacket's really cool. And he says, here, you know, wear it. And he was like, tried it on. He said, oh, it's really nice. And he says, right, you've got to wear that on Top of the Pops like this week. And he was like, yeah, definitely. And so we all got really excited. So we watched kind of Top of the Pops that week, and obviously the stylist had got to him, and they all had to like wear something else instead, or a t-shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
So it didn't. Andy's jacket didn't make it on Top of the Pops. So,
Oh, God.
So that's it. Nearly
Moment.
It could have ended up in like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something. And it was like, I was there when it was handed over and taken away, but maybe it didn't even kind of make it home. I don't know.
That'd have been a real cool moment to see that on TV, actually, and then had a story to tell in the pub.
Yes. Although sometimes maybe the Nearly story that there's this description of being close to something, but not part of it. So that's how I was as near to that experience as the jacket was to being on Top of the Pops.
Yeah.
So I was around and saw bits of it. You know, saw the change from the kind of indie scene to when it became that little bit bigger, and it was definitely catching a moment from the music I grew up with at school, being into the Smiths and Stone Roses, and being a massive Jam fan. Even once they'd finished, that was like literally the first cassette of music I ever had.
Wow.
And to see those bands coming out of the kind of late 80s, early 90s that reflected that kind of sort of mod 60s influence, but being British, but not in that cartoon Britishness that maybe later in Britpop it was portrayed at, but just as an antidote to what was then popular culture was America. It's like it was Top Gun and Ray-Bans and sort of jeans and kind of sort of big cars, and it was like, no, that's where's our lives being reflected in this? And those bands that came along, from Stone Roses onwards, they felt like they were singing about your experiences, even when there was like Primal Scream, when they were like sounding quite American and rock and roll in the kind of later albums, but it still felt closer to you than it coming from somewhere else. So I thought that was a really exciting time, and it was just timing. It just so happened that I was at uni there when he did that, and I was lucky to see something similar when I moved up here later in the 90s after uni to come and experience bands developing in Glasgow, like the Delgados and Mogwai, Arab Strap, Bell and Sebastian, Franz Ferdinand. Seeing those, it was really exciting.
Yeah, it's almost like a new generation, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that same thing, even though that music, some felt very Scottish, think about singing in a Scottish accent, talking very much about identifiably Scottish or Glaswegian experiences, but then also just some other bands making just great rock and roll, like great music. It was, it's really cool.
And the thing about Britpop is it's generational. I think like bands like Oasis was what I got into when I was young. Stone Roses. I'm speaking to kids that are 14 and 15 now, and they are into Stone Roses and Oasis, and you're like, it's just a cycle, isn't it? But I was heavily into Britpop when I was around 14, 15, but I was also into that kind of indie, the new wave of indie, like you got the Killers, the Frills, the Strokes, all these bands that were just coming out of nowhere, and it felt like a little resurgence from Britpop, because Britpop was kind of dead. Oasis were still, and Blur were still making albums and stuff, but we'd moved on to around 2005 and music just took off again, and it's such a massive peak. There were so many bands out that there was a new band to go and see every week. But going back to your experiences in Britpop, did you go and see quite a lot of bands during that time? Like, is there a lot of memories that you've got there that you could share?
One, it was band came to us.
Oh.
So there was a student union at the bottom of the building that I studied in, and we're sitting there drinking our pints of Murphy's stout.
Murphy's,
and suddenly all these kind of cool Camden trendy types started arriving.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on here? And they were setting up the stage and putting these kind of silver balls, kind of sort of foam balls hanging from the ceiling, and setting up keyboards and drums and all this kind of stuff. And I remember walking out of the bar to go to the loo, and then when I came back, somebody was like saying, "Oh, you got to pay." And I was like, "No, I'm just going back to my seat." And it was like, "No, you got to pay. There's a band on tonight." It's like, "Well, I was here already." And I was getting all kind of like, "Whoa," things like that. And then like Richie Manic walked past me, and Janice Long, and then there was Blur, and I was like, "What's going on here?" And then I kind of finally convinced them that I didn't need to pay because I was there already somehow. I think because there was just,
I don't know, imagine you got chucked out.
People, but what happened was it was a gig by Pulp.
Oh.
They'd just been signed to Island Records, and to celebrate, they wanted to play to their pals, and they played our student union.
Yeah.
So I got, without knowing who the heck they were, Jarvis Cocker came on stage. And they played Lip Gloss, and I was like gobsmacked.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. It was like, it was tingly. It was like, you're just going, this is amazing. This is like all the things that I loved about the Smiths.
Yeah.
But with this kind of sort of new edge to it as well.
Yeah.
And just an incredible performer. And it was just like, oh. And there was like then desperately trying to find out who they were, what I'd just seen, because I had no idea. So it was so flicking through the NME and just go, oh right, okay. So all these people I'd kind of glossed over to go and read about Blair or Stone Roses, were they going to make another album or whatever?
Yeah.
It was like there was the bigger and bigger articles about Pulp, and it's just like, oh my gosh. So that was quite fun. So yeah, that was a cool moment that I didn't seek out, but it just landed on me.
That's
So
amazing.
that was fun. That was fun to have. That would be like, I guess it's like here in Glasgow, isn't it? All the people that claim to have been at the King Tut's Oasis gig.
I was there.
Yeah, they would have filled Hampden if all the people that have ever claimed that were at that gig.
And if you've ever been to the King Tut's, it's not a huge venue, so
if you were there, you would have seen everybody else.
Yeah,
you would have known.
And plus, I think they were on really early as well.
Yeah,
they're not on like stupid o'clock.
Yeah.
So not many people pitch up to watch the first couple of acts, but. Speaking of Oasis, were you Team Oasis or Team Blur?
It was Blur.
Blur.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Phil, this. I'm psyching myself after teasing you about Man United. I would be really dismissive about. For me, Oasis are good. Great.
Yeah,
maybe is a bit of a push. There's some amazing songs. You get really emotional hearing people saying "Look Back in Anger" or "Wonderwall" or I suppose "Champagne Supernova" maybe in Columbia are some of my favourite songs. But
absolutely,
for me they were another really good Croatian band.
Yeah.
But there was others on Croatian that I just loved, whether that was Primal Scream, Ride, Boo Radley's, and a band that are just amazing and partly have something to do with why I'm here, which is Teenage Fan Club. So when you've got Teenage Fan Club, for me, in my head, you go, that's tick. You don't need an Oasis after that. So it was very much Blur. And that matched with that experience of living in London at that time. So my Blur is Modern Life is Rubbish,
right?
More so than Park Life. It's that early bit that they were just kind of starting to capture that experience of being English, living in a city, having those experiences. So it's those songs that resonated more with me than.
And the reason they probably dominated the charts was because they were quite similar in a way. They both had two albums that were like wildly too good, definitely maybe in What's the Story, Morning Glory, or probably in everybody's household, and probably the same with Park Life and The Modern Life.
Yeah.
For me, I just gravitated more towards Attitude because I got into them way after they were, popular. I was about 15 at the time, so I'd already seen them grow and go into a different direction to what they became. So I wasn't really around. I was too young to witness them around at the time, and it was just the attitude of it that I loved because I was becoming a teenager. Yeah,
but I think it was interesting because it does go back to, we spoke earlier about the jam mods, British 60s, that Englishness of it. I think also it's a bit like the Smiths were very much a kind of sort of that student enemy kind of band. It felt like you had to have a pair of glasses, read a book, whereas Stone Roses, Primal Scream and then Blur and Oasis were ones where anyone could be into them, not just your kind of like John Peel enemy indie kid. And I think that was the powerful thing about it. And I guess that's what the Britpop kind of sticker over them is about. It's actually saying that, identifying popular culture, popular music that appealed to a wide range of people. But it wasn't just the music, it was a sense of films. We talked about Trainspotting, and fashion as well. Everyone's Ben Sherman shirt is probably as much to do with Oasis as it might be to do with the jam or kind of 60s mod. It's so I think that's great, that idea of music being part of something bigger. There's an attitude, there's fashion, there's maybe even books, maybe even getting into other things. All it took was for your favorite pop star or musician to mention an author or a movie, and you would devour that, wouldn't you? You would kind of latch onto that. So they were kind of sharing and expanding your horizons more than just the emotion and feeling of the band. They were talking about these other things you would go and hunt down as well, weren't they?
Yeah. Speaking of Trainspotting there, that came around about the same generation, didn't it? So I always think about Trainspotting, I'm like, do other people in the world get it, or is it just being British that you think this is one of the best films ever made? It's just got to be.
I think for me, because what's interesting about that, so I'd been in London in Camden for uni, and then when that finished, cousin and I went back home to the East Midlands, a place called Corby. It's a steel town, but has lots of Scots and Irish immigrants. So my family are all Scottish. So my mum and her family came from Edinburgh. My dad's dad, my granddad, literally used to live around the corner from where we are today in the East End of Glasgow. So Scotland was always in the background, was hovering around. So when uni finished, a cousin, I was signing on, he was working in the job centre. We sat opposite each other and thought, maybe there's something better to do than this. Certainly, I had to figure that out. But we decided to kind of move up here, and it was to do with music. But we had a flat on the bottom of Byers Road.
Right.
And a cousin was sitting out the window, like filling in application forms, trying to get a job, filling out housing benefit forms, trying to get money and doing all that. And you're looking out the window and there's this kind of commotion, and they were filming Train Spotting outside our flat. So we lived near where the volcano was.
Right,
so
okay, yeah.
But the bit he saw was again Ewan Bremner. So Spuds, he's in the gutter, and Diane Kelly MacDonald walks past him, and it's a short moment in the movie. If you remember, it's like a letter when Renton's in London.
Yeah.
And so Cole was watching it, because what happened was they set the shot up, and then every time they tried to film it, somebody, like a passerby or somebody in the street, was trying to help him up. And he was like, no, I'm making a film. Because it was done so cheaply that, it's not like now where you shut the entire kind of street down like Brad Pitt in George Square or something. So they were just on the fly, trying to, in between the traffic starting and stopping. So people were trying to help him up. And he was like, no, we're trying to film something. It was like, what? So that was quite fun. So it felt... That was a real celebration of both that, because on the soundtrack are like Blair and Pulp and stuff like that, but also landing in Glasgow at that moment. So, and British movies before that were rubbish.
Yeah.
So they were terrible. And this one had so much vibrancy, was clearly British, very Scottish in that sense as well. And you just go, do people get it? So I suppose that's a question for people from beyond these shores listening to this.
That's true.
Do you get it? Do you get Train Spotting? What do you think of it?
They're maybe just watching it being like, I don't get it at all. What?
But every moment of that movie is incredible. I've got there's a guy called Jay Glennie, and he creates these amazing hardback kind of large format books on movies. He's done one on Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, Performance, but he did one on Train Spotting, and it bring together different photos and stories and interviews from all the people involved, and I'm kind of slowly going through it because it's really big, really heavy, but it is amazing. It felt like a kind of cultural moment, maybe even more so than the Britpop thing, because it was wider and further.
Yeah, and as you said on the soundtrack, again, I think that was in everybody's homes in Scotland as well, or maybe all over Britain, but they had some absolute fantastic songs in that. And what for you would be a song that defines Britpop in your experience? Doesn't necessarily need to be like that's the Britpop song, but to you.
The one that means most to me, actually, is interesting. So I was just going on about indie and modern life is rubbish, and maybe kind of glossing over that whole kind of park life, Phil Daniels thing. But it's This Is a Low.
Right.
So it's the song that when Damon Albarn was feeling so homesick on a tour in America, and he had this kind of, I think it was a tea towel of the shipping forecast areas, and so the song references the different kind of parts of the shipping forecast. You know, that thing that's on Radio 4 is like Dogger Bank and all those ones, and that song is for me about a kind of end of Britishness, you know, and even more so, I remember listening to it a lot around Brexit, and like just thinking, you know, there's a sadness to that identity, that kind of sort of hanging on to imperialism, you know, triumphant, kind of all that stuff that we saw with the kind of sort of last year with the kind of Jubilee and things. And I think that song really captures that, the end of that. And I think that was a real education for me, having this kind of dual identity, brought up in England, but having a Scottish identity. So it'd be an easy fit to be British. And I think This Is a Low was the one that finally killed it for me. It started with Elizabeth My Dear on Stone Roses. But I think that one really summed up the feeling of there's nothing to offer with that kind of view of the world. And to hang on to it is to see that sadness that is in that song.
That's awesome. Thanks.
So,
Thanks for sharing that.
Which I think is interesting because it's the other way round of like, because I could have said Parklife, I could have been very celebratory and buoyant, and that also feels quite gender, because another thing that I feel really uncomfortable about Britpop is that it excludes a lot of amazing kind of female-led kind of sort of bands. So for me, I mean, the Stone Roses, yes, they made a couple of records, but really, they made one.
Absolutely. Like the Sex Pistols, exactly the same.
And Elastica did that. And I think, you know, if you were to kind of pick an album of that kind of early, mid-90s times that I think really is really special and maybe a little overlooked, then I would say the Elastica album.
Right.
You didn't need to have made any more records. You make that one, the style, the look of it, the fact that it's sort of, you know, it's female fronted as well, I think is has a lot going for it. So I think that's that's one to look out. If you're not familiar with it, then definitely hunt that one out as well. I love that album.
And that kind of leads me to asking, who do you think was the most overrated and who do you think was the most underrated bands of Britpop?
Okay. Overrated. I think I kind of fessed that up already, which is Oasis. You know, like I think the Test of Time. Like, I love listening to some of those songs, but it's nostalgia. Whereas I think some of the other songs still mean something. You know? You know, if you think of like Common People by Pulp, like it's like, wow, you know, that still speaks to you today. You know. I think overrated is to try and peel off that Britpop sticker to the music of that time. I think when you go too much of that kind of like top of the pops, battle of the bands, it excludes things like the female-fronted bands, so Elastica, Sleeper, and those kind of bands. But also, I think Massive Attack were an amazing band that were making records around that time. And I think if you stop talking about Britpop as just Blair Oasis, that makes room to realise just what an incredible range of music was coming out of, you know, England or Britain at that time. So I would say, to be a bit kind of cheeky about it, I would say something like Massive Attack.
So they're your underrated, and Oasis are your overrated.
A little bit, that's okay.
No, I get it. I was very into Oasis, so but they were the first band that I properly got into, so I don't know if that's nostalgia for me. Because I'll always look back on those songs and be like, that's where I got into music. You know, I heard Cigarettes and Alcohol. You know, I heard Columbia, anything off, definitely, maybe, basically. And that just got me excited about music. And
and I think that's the thing. I think it's like the game Top Trumps. You remember where you used to, like, you would have a car and it would tell you how big the motor was, or you know, how big the wheels were, and you played off each other. And I think what I like about the idea of you opening up a range of topics on this podcast is that it's not playing Top Trumps. It's not saying I like Blair are better than another band, and that's it. It's going, this is why I love this music, or why that song means something to me. And that passion is infectious, not you must like that same thing and you must agree with me. And I think, you know, going back to that, you know, if Nathan Jones is still the manager of Southampton by the time this comes out, that fast turning round of kind of sort of judgmental, opinion-driven music, you know, like, hopefully it's been in jest, like, really kind of having a bit of fun and sort of just dismissing one of the biggest, most popular, most exciting bands. I already have a list of friends in my head that are just going, what is this? It's disgraceful. You know, it's like, and friends, kids, you know, that's the great thing as well. If we're as far away from these albums, we're further away from these albums than we were from, like, Sgt. Pepper when those albums came out. You know, it's crazy, you know, it's about going and picking the music that means something to you or means everything to you. And so however nostalgic I get, however much I love listening to Modern Life is Rubbish on the train on the way here today. I'm most excited about the band I went to see last night.
Right.
It's at Luke's, which is Spires.
Okay.
So it's a Glasgow band. And they released a few singles, and I think there's another one coming out like this 17th, so next week or this week by the time people might listen to this. And they're amazing. I just love them. There's four people in the band, 2 young women, 2 young guys, and they rock it up. They're fantastic. Their songs are amazing. There's words to them. There's feeling, attitude, and amazing playing.
Yeah.
And to top it all, they cover Litigri's Decapiton.
Oh, okay. That's a good tune.
as their kind of encore. So they really went for it last night at St. Luke's, and it was amazing.
So it's a cool venue, isn't it? I really like it.
It was really fun, and it was really exciting because there was old guys like me near the back who like them because their sound sounds like PJ Harvey, sounds like kind of sort of bands like that, like Belly, Elastica, Breeders, that kind of thing. Really great rock and roll music, and then there's people their age going crazy for it who are probably discovering some of these bands at the same time. So I think that's what's really exciting, and keeping yourself open so you're not going, I like this band, so I can't like any others. Like sometimes we do with kind of sort of binge watching TV series.
Absolutely,
you know, I haven't got time to pick a new one because I'm still getting through this one. Like, I watched The Wire, which meant that I know of The Sopranos. I know that I would love it, but I just couldn't cope with another DVD box set at the time. So I stuck with The Wire and let Sopranos go. So I've only seen a few episodes of that, but I love, you know, Godfather movies. I love kind of sort of Scorsese movies. I know I'd love it. Yeah. But at that time, it was like there's only room. You know, I was monogamous with my sort of binge TV DVD collection.
Yeah. And that's, did you, I take it you collected DVDs like a lot of people did, you know?
Not that many, because my friend's son is getting into movies. And I was like, oh, look, I'll look out all these cool films I've got on DVD. And I went to the box, you know, that they were all in. Yeah. And there wasn't that many. So I must have been getting them from other people. I had a flatmate who had worked at Borders.
Right, okay.
And got lots of DVDs. So I think that's where my kind of sort of film library was from.
And what were the films that you were going to recommend to look at?
So what I was going to, he was interested in the kind of sort of those kind of classic 70s, 80s ones. So he was wanting to see Taxi Driver and things like that. And then like all the Scorsese movies, I just think at that time are great, from Mean Streets. And, you know, he's like 13. So I think, you know, if you're wanting to think about what it is to be a young person, a young man, then I think, you know, it's interesting to see, because however kind of sort of cool and kind of sort of dangerous Scorsese's characters are, you also see them fall. Yeah. You know, you also see them lose things, not just fingers or their lives, but, you know, and I think that's a real powerful lesson, because so much of life today is about my perfect version, my filtered, you know, photoshopped view of my life. Yeah. I think, you know, there's a place for
like me, swipe me, follow me. You know?
So you know, that's not what happens in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
You know, that's not what happens in Raging Bull. Yeah. You know, and I think there's still important life lessons to learn. And, you know, in the same way as, you know, someone writing a song in their 20s, in the 90s, or now, or in the 60s or 70s, you know, can still teach us something. You know, David Bowie's songs have as much to tell a young person now, or someone the same age as Bowie when he was writing them, just because they were mum or your grand's music doesn't mean that they can't speak to you.
Yeah, and that's what's funny about music in general, that I grew up in a house where music was on all the time. You know, my mum and dad would clean the house, they're clean freaks. And they would have a wide range of music on at the time. So I was exposed to that from quite a young age. And at the time, you're like, oh, put that off. I want to just stick something that I like on. But I actually learned to like that music. And Bowie, Mark Bolan, there was like Tom Jones, there was jazz, Paul Weller. There was soul music like Otis Redding and Stevie Wonder, and you know, that opened my mind musically. And as I grew into being an adult, you know, I looked back the way and started looking at the bands that influenced the bands that I liked. Beatles, Stones,
Yeah.
that leads you to Chuck Berry, that then takes you off in another direction. And it's just fascinating where you go. And, you know, I think expand your music taste. Don't just, you said something earlier about being closed off to just liking what you like. And that's fine, but don't be closed off. You know, there's so much music out there to discover.
Yeah.
And hopefully through this podcast, we're going to be sharing a lot of bands. And thank you for sharing a new one for us to check out as well.
Absolutely. My my dad, in between me like the steelwork shirt and in between jobs, he'd take me to school, and I was always mortified. I was so embarrassed because he'd keep on going on like country music and Johnny Cash, and like singing songs or was speaking some of the words, and I was like, oh God, this is so embarrassing, Dad. Oh no. And then the American recordings, the kind of Rick Rubin albums came out, and there was the Walk the Line movie.
Fantastic.
So every time one of those albums came out, I bought my dad it on CD for his Father's Day or his birthday, Christmas, and it was pretty much me going, you were right, I was wrong, I'm sorry. With each one handing it over, just going, you know, I should have listened to you, you know, and things like that. So so it sometimes it takes a little longer to come round to it, and it's also good. It's good to choose the music that means something to you rather than taking it from somewhere else, you know. So like, I like the Beatles, my mum likes the Beatles, and I'm lucky enough to have her like singles and the album that she has, but she liked early Beatles, so I still had to go out and buy Revolver and Rubber Soul myself.
The White Album.
Yeah, I had to buy those late ones because she'd lost interest by that point. But you know, I have singles with like her initials on it from when she was like sort of 15, of like, you know, I Want to Hold Your Hand and Can't Buy Me Love. I've got these on singles that are bought in Woolies in Edinburgh, you know, when they came out, and that's really thrilling to make that connection.
Good to have in your collection, and vinyl's made such a resurgence lately. And you know, I inherited some of my mum and dad's collection, and you know, I'd hate to think of what people have up in the loft. You know, they might have all these classic albums that they bought at the time, and their music changed, and they've just been like, right, up in the attic. Yeah, like, go dig out your vinyls. You might have some money in the bank. Because of them. So, and
because I did that recently. So my midlife crisis, my best mate bought a motorbike, and I bought a turntable. Right. So after having cassettes and CDs, I finally started buying things on vinyl. And what's great is that, yes, it's brilliant having music on your phone, like having all the music all the time on your phone, but putting an album on, sitting down and waiting and listening and having to get up halfway through and switch it over makes you listen in a different way again. You know, I guess it's like watching a movie in a cinema to watching it on an iPad, you know, on the city. You know, it makes you appreciate things in that new way. And you know, I think that's something we need to kind of, well, I certainly had to kind of learn again and catch myself not just being so disposable. But you know, like, it's like having a takeaway and cooking your food, isn't it? It's the same thing.
It's like when that needle hits and just that little raspiness. They're the moments that you savor as well. And
it's just a shame that then Liam Gallagher starts singing.
Well, to be honest, I only have, I think I've got definitely maybe in What's the Story, Morning Glory and vinyl, but I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan. Sorry. So I've got a lot of his records on vinyl, and you know, I bought a lot of them on eBay, so I'm hoping they're originals, but the price that I paid for them are probably not. But I absolutely love that. Just getting into the zone, and I think getting up and changing it, it takes you into it, but also it takes that laziness away, because you could sometimes think, I need to get up and switch this over. It's annoying. I'll just go into Spotify and I'll listen to it. But the experience of vinyl is just something that I think people who love music really appreciate.
And that seems to be coming back as well. I think there is probably a connection between the energy and originality in young bands today with the fact that they are wanting to kind of release things on vinyl as well as well, cassettes and all these kind of things, but you know, wanting their music to be kind of considered, and you know, the artwork, because that's the whole thing as well. When it was a CD or a cassette, it didn't matter what the cover was, whereas when it's a record, like, it means something. What is the picture? What does it mean? Who are you referring to? Think about, you know, the Smiths, you know, like, you had to go and find out who these people were and why he was choosing to have Terence Stamp or, you know, sort of old Coronation Street characters, you know, on the front covers of the singles and the albums. You know, it made you want to know more, dig deeper.
Yeah, it's engaging, isn't it? And there's album covers that you look at in the shop and you think, I'll take a chance and I'll buy it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the power of the artwork that's in front.
Yes.
I remember hearing a story about Otis Redding's first record. I think it was called Blue. And due to the racism at the time, they were like, we can't put your face on the front record because it won't sell.
Yeah.
Record companies were just like, no, nobody's going to want to listen to black man sing. So they decided to put a female on it, and people were picking it up and just absolutely fall in love with it, and then finding out he was a black man. And, you know, that's, you know, a shame that that's had to go through that, but that's another story about the front cover. You know, you don't know what the story is, so it's engaging.
There's bands, American bands that were around the time of Lemonheads and Dinosaur Jr. called Buffalo Tom.
Yep.
And I remember a mate getting one of their records, and it had an Aborigine guy, so kind of sort of from Australia. It was a picture of him like sitting in front of a house. So mate Dave had bought it thinking it was like a band from like Northern Territory, Australia, and like really cool.
Yeah.
And then he got home and listened to it, and it was these kind of white guys from Boston playing like grunge, and that's how. But that's what made him pick it up, was this amazing image.
Yeah.
Going, I want to know what that guy, what's going on with that guy. Why is he the picture on the album? And then he ended up getting into this band that way, and getting me into it as well. So it was kind of fun when, with visual people as well as you know, listening. So it's the whole package. It's as you said before about the appeal of Oasis being the swagger, the attitude that wasn't this kind of sort of the national health glasses, cardi wearing indie kid that was too scared to look at anybody. They came on and were like grabbing your attention and annoying you as much as, you know, sort of, you know, making you love them as well. That was part of the excitement.
I know. And I was having a wee look at your Instagram, and I saw that you had a map of all the places that you've travelled in the world, and you've got it kind of like, you've got little flags to where you've been.
Well, that's actually just one trip. So
one trip.
What happened is that 2007, I'd finished working and was looking for something else to do. Friends had moved to Australia, moved to Melbourne, just had a kid. Yeah. So the idea was, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell up, pay off my debts, and go travelling. And I was going to get one of those really cheap round-the-world flights and go to all these amazing places. And then I was reading a book, George Monbiot book about climate change. It made me feel really guilty about flying. So I Googled buses to Australia and found a company that was going to take you from London to Sydney in 3 months. And that's what I did.
Wow.
So that little map is all the places on just that trip.
Wow.
Going through Europe, Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, India, Southeast Asia. So that's what that was.
I thought that was just all the places you'd been in your life. I was like, that in itself is a huge list, because you've got a lot of the world ticked off there.
Well, I hadn't done that much travelling, to be honest, before then, which is why the idea of Round the World was going to make up for all the holidays I'd not had while I was working too much. And then it turned into this crazy idea. But that was a lot of fun. Just an amazing experience. It felt like 3 years of university in 3 months. Went through every emotion, every experience, and with a whole bunch of people you'd never met before, but shared those moments, those feelings, those experiences, that sense of adventure. It was a lot of fun.
So would you recommend that then?
Maybe, yeah. There's different versions of it. There is something about overland travel and doing it slowly. I guess it's a bit like the record, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
The landing in an airport in a city
Uh-huh.
and then heading off again is a bit like streaming a song on your phone,
Yeah.
or taking time, slowing things down is like putting the record on. So yeah, I think there's something to do with that. But there's a lot of uncomfort. I used to be really, despite the fact we talked about the spud scene in Trainspotting, really squeamish about like toilets and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I really kind of like get all kind of Miss Marple or kind of sort of, Maggie Smith in Downton Abbey about it. But once you've had to go in a roadside cafe in the middle of Pakistan with chickens running around and it's just a kind of shed at the back.
Yeah.
Once you've done that, then you're not squeamish anymore about going anywhere. So that was
something you learned about yourself on the way.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't think I would never have learned that in any other way than out of necessity, because when you need to go, you need to go.
Absolutely.
No matter where you are.
And you're going to be eating loads of different foods as well along that way, so your stomach might, you know.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Although it's a great being vegetarian in Iran is a great way to lose lots of weight, because they didn't quite understand it.
Yeah.
And so I spent pretty much 2 weeks eating rice with a steamed tomato on the top.
Oh.
And then it was one of the last days, and I got really excited because it came out and there was the same steamed rice and there was this big red thing on the top, and I thought, oh great, maybe it's a pepper. And I broke into it and it was just a really big tomato.
So you're like, this is life.
So it took all day to travel across the border, because that's the other interesting thing is when you're going overland, is it takes a long time to go through a border.
Yeah.
Which, so I've never complained anymore about queues in airports, but it took all day, and then we got picked up on the Pakistan side, and the army took us through like bandit country, through Baluchistan desert, because we're this like big white bus full of white people. So it was probably a good idea that we had like some protection,
some backup.
So it took us about a day and a half to finally get to Quetta, on the other side of the desert, to the hotel, and it was amazing. There was a vegetarian curry set out, there was cricket, and this was a sort of hotel for tourists, so it had alcohol, which we hadn't had for the last 2 weeks. And so I was nearly crying. I had about 4 helpings of this like amazing food and a beer, and talking to everybody about the cricket, and everyone else was exhausted. They all went to bed, and I was just like sitting there going, I am so alive, because I spent the last 2 weeks eating steamed tomatoes and rice and dates and nuts, and it was just I couldn't stop eating.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. I think that is still possibly the best meal I will ever have, because that feeling of satisfaction was just incredible. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thank you very much to the people that fed me and kept feeding me.
Yeah,
that
I know.
day.
Who knows where this podcast will reach, but if it reaches over there, that'd be fantastic. Was there a favourite destination along the way?
Pakistan was a lot of fun. The people were incredible. Iran, because it was so different, but so beautiful. There's a city in the middle of Iran called Esfahan, and there's a big kind of square with a bazaar around it, and a kind of mosque and a kind of sort of palace, and it is just beautiful. It's just stunning. And that was a moment where you just went, I would never have got here unless I came this way.
Yeah.
And then, even though you see pictures of the Taj Mahal or Uluru, Ayers Rock, or Golden Temple of Amritsar or Everest, you see these places, when you're actually standing there looking at them for real, or seeing them out the window on a plane, as we flew up around Everest and realised it's the top of it is still stuck to the ground, even though we're in a plane above the clouds.
Yeah.
But seeing these places and realising just how special they were. So yeah, there's moments like that just catch you every so often.
Yeah.
And it's nice being asked, because it was a long time ago. It's 15 years ago, and so I forget just how cool it was sometimes. But it came back this week, because we passed through the area where the earthquake in Turkey and Syria.
Right.
So we actually travelled through that area,
right?
And one of the cities that got affected. So that brings that home. Like, there's a stronger connection with what people are having to go through because I was there.
Yeah.
Hopefully when things like that happen, you do connect.
Yeah.
But I was lucky enough to have passed through there, so it was like I've been there. I know what that place is like.
Yeah.
It felt like it happened nearer to you, so you could,
Yeah.
feel more.
Whereas some people are
empathy.
just seeing it on the TV,
Yeah.
seeing something in Syria, they don't have any connection
Yeah.
to it. They'll be
Yeah.
be concerned, but
Yeah.
you've got that connection to it.
Yeah.
Was there any place that surprised you at how good it was compared to what your thought was before? Like going into countries like Pakistan and Iran. Like some of us will have our own imagination of what that experience would be like. But was there anyone that surprised you that it was either better or worse than you imagined?
I think Australia.
Right.
Like, there's a reason why everyone's so happy because it's so beautiful. And we're walking around the coast near Sydney, going from towards Bondi Beach, and school had finished, and so all the kids were arriving home, and they kind of just dumped their stuff in the houses, and then a minute or so later we're just running out onto the beach. And that was there, whereas we used to go to the park or hang around the chippy after school. These guys were running towards the beach and diving in the water, and you went, yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
So I never got annoyed by how annoying happy Australians are now. But yeah, no, that was an incredible experience to kind of travel through the centre. So go to Northern Territory, go to Uluru, Ayers Rock, walk around that. Felt really special because I used to love Australian bands, from the cheesy stuff like In Excess, but also things like Midnight Oil. So who sang about kind of sort of Aboriginal rights and things like that. So again, it was music that was educating me about these places that I wanted to go to or had a better understanding of once I was there, and a lot of it came through music to begin with, as well as reading about it or watching films or documentaries, but a lot of it starts with music, picking up that CD or pressing play on a list and just seeing where that takes you. I think it's always really exciting.
Those are the things that if you're traveling and you pick up a CD, I know CDs are not really that popular now, but picking up something that's going to jog you back to that memory, it's more of a keepsake rather than just a CD. And there's something in that, I think. And is there anywhere in the world that you've still that's maybe on your bucket list to still visit?
Well, there's still continents full of places that I've not been to. So I haven't been to much of the Americas. So hopefully Scotland qualify for the next World Cup, and they're back in Mexico again, they were in '86, and you can go there. And huge parts, all of Africa. I've not really been at all there, so that would be really amazing as well as then go back to all the places I've been to already. So yeah, there's quite a lot, isn't there?
I mean, that would be amazing if Scotland can get there. I think they've expanded how many teams can get into it, so there's a better chance. And I feel like we've got a decent squad enough to get there now.
I'm really excited about it because I'm old enough to one of my first footballing memories is the '78 World Cup.
Wow.
So I don't remember the Scotland games, but I do remember the final.
Right.
Kempes and Ardiles and Ricky Villa and all that stuff. So, but then Scotland were always in the World Cups. There was a way to find out about different countries. Spain '82, Mexico '86, Italy '90. I'd get maps on my wall and put pins in where all the games were being played and get the sticker books and learn about Mexico or Spain or these places that we were going to and all playing against. New Zealand, Iran, Costa Rica. All these teams normally not play very well against, but that was a way to open up the world to you. Find those places are. So I think they're that kind of sort of, again, that's what popular culture can do. It can satisfy that sense of entertainment or distraction or interest, or it can be a kind of little doorway into new things or other places. And that's what's really interesting. Hopefully, the conversations you're going to have on this and not know where they go or what new things you might learn about.
And I want our listeners to get used to your voice because I'd love to have you back on again. We've just run out of time, but thank you so much for coming on. It really means the world that you're coming on at this point and having a chat. It's been fantastic catching up and getting to know a little bit more about you. So Yeah, thank you very much. Is there anywhere people can find you online?
I'm trying to kind of get away from that as much as possible, actually. So, because for a long time, social media was associated with jobs I've done in the past. So probably not worth following for the rest of this season because it is just going to be pictures of Gabriel Jesus, Martinelli, Odegaard, Shevchenko, and you know, the God's head, which is Kieran Tierney. So, so maybe wait until Arsenal do win the league, and then I might have some more interesting things to say.
Well, you're one of the most interesting guys I know. So again, thank you for coming on, and we'll see you in the next one.